It's a really good way to reset when you're kind of getting caught up in that, running from the tiger mode, right? And so finding little moments of joy here and there, whatever it looks like for you, do it.
Welcome to the Phase 4 podcast, inspired by Vishen Lakiani and Ajit Nawalkar, co-founders of EverCoach, a division of Vine Valley. In this podcast, we speak to coaches and creatives about where they were, where they are, and where they are going. This is an intersection of what we focus on expands, and your story is your superpower. My guest today is Jen Yundt Coles. She is an AFMC, Certified Integrative and Functional Medicine Nutrition Health Coach, and a Certified Acupressure Practitioner. Put simply, she is the SIBO Coach. And today we're going to talk about that and much more. And Jen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, JP. I'm really looking forward to our chat today.
Yeah, me too. Definitely grateful. And I guess the very first place to start would be, what is a SIBO Coach?
Yeah, so if your audience doesn't know what SIBO is, it's SIBO, and it stands for Small Intestinal Bacterial Overgrowth. And essentially, it's bacteria in the wrong place, right? So we know that we have a variety and dense microbiome in the large colon, but our small intestines is usually more of a sterile atmosphere. I mean, it's not 100% sterile, right? But it's where we really need to be assimilating our nutrients and gathering information from our food for our best healthy cells. But when bacteria gets overgrown there for whatever reason, which we can talk about, it can wreak havoc on your health. It causes inflammation and leaky gut and all sorts of other issues like nutrient deficiencies and such. So it's really important to address. And I'll also just point out, in case you hadn't heard of SIBO, you may have heard of IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, right? It's very common. It's what I like to call a very vague and lackluster group of symptoms that they put together in this kind of lame diagnosis of IBS, right? It's basically when they don't know what's going on. And new studies are coming out. A good upwards of like 60 to 80% of people who are dealing with IBS symptoms actually have SIBO going on. So it's really important to bring more awareness to folks out there so that they know what to look for.
And so those 60 to 80%, they don't know that it's SIBO. They're thinking it's IBS?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the symptoms are very similar. So it's bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, things like that. But SIBO includes so many more other symptoms that we can see. It can manifest itself like brain fog or migraines or body pain syndromes. The list goes on, rashes and things like that. So when we have these other things going on in our body, it's really important to ask ourselves, what's up with my gut microbiome right now? And let's ask some more questions. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to go two ways. Either how did you end up here? Or the other one would be, what kind of tests should somebody take? But maybe the first one might be a better to begin.
Yeah. So I have a lifelong journey, decades of my own digestive issues. And basically that manifested itself like constipation and just bloating and uncomfortable feeling all the time. Even as a young child, I would complain about this to my parents, and back then it was kind of like, well, here's some Metamucil, and it wasn't really helpful, but they didn't know, right? And just eating a lot of food that probably wasn't best matched for my particular unique body and things like that. Really suffered as a child. As a teenager, you start becoming more empowered as a teen. And so you start making decisions like, well, I'm going to go eat out and have fast food with my friends, go to the football game and eat the junk food and all that kind of stuff. And then starting to self-medicate myself, living on Pepto and Mylanta and ibuprofen and all of that. And now as a health coach, I know, oh my gosh, I set myself up for this, right? But really suffered for many years and through college and then getting married. And then having that relationship also just kind of fed into my anxiety about using the bathroom. And traveling was really difficult. And then trying to work out my eating habits with my husband really affected our relationship. And so, it can be quite complex when you have chronic digestive issues. People don't understand that it affects so many other aspects of your life, right? And then I had children. I had two kids back to back, and that was really hard on my body as well. And, above all of this, I've always been kind of what I like to call a high achiever or a go-getter, and always had some kind of new project to work on or moving to a new place and keeping myself busy. And I think in hindsight, that was sort of a way for me to self self-medicate or self-soothe to constantly be busy. So I'm not like, thinking about my feelings and all that kind of stuff, right? Um, and eventually all of that kind of caught up with me. I've had a few different kinds of careers in the arts, in Chinese medicine. I even had a gluten-free bakery at one point because I found out that I had a wheat allergy. And so really kind of constantly going. And then eventually I ended up with what we call broken heart syndrome. The technical term is Takotsubo myocarditis. It's essentially a heart event, and much like a heart attack, the muscle can contract and be inflamed. You can have all the symptoms. I had all the symptoms: chest, back, jaw, arm, all the things. Very scary. And, I was in my early 40s. So this was a wake-up call for me that something had to change. Um, and, it's really interesting now that I look at it, and my training in traditional Chinese medicine taught me that there are energetic meridians in the body, and the heart and the small intestine are like besties. And so I thought that that was very interesting. Well, that event with my heart led me to my first taste of functional medicine. So I'm wrapping up my story here to tell you how I got here. But that was my first taste of functional medicine. And she said, "Hey, have you ever been tested for SIBO?" And I said, "What's that?" Because I went from decades of being constipated to all of a sudden having all this diarrhea after the heart event. And I became severely nutrient deficient and very weak. Couldn't get out of bed, couldn't take my kids to their travel soccer games. It was really excruciating and deflating to my spirit.
Yeah.
And I just knew that there had to be more. So that's when I dove in. I went to health coaching school, and then I put myself through functional medicine school. I went to SAFM, which I love. And word got out that I had helped myself with SIBO and other people with their SIBO. And so I decided to rebrand myself as the SIBO coach. And now, essentially I'm working with people with gut issues, but specifically this dynamic. So that was a long story, but I hope that helps explain how I got here.
Yeah, no, it's great. And so now you're doing good though, right?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Interestingly, I had sort of a stressful year. I was hit by a drunk driver last year in a hit and run, and kind of put me into concussion land. I've had some things, life is not linear, up and down, but I have my tools, and I know how to help myself. And I'll be honest, it's a challenge for someone who had that mental, sort of self-talk and language to be constantly on the go, to reframe that and understand the importance of rest and taking a break and reframing things.
Yeah.
And it's a daily struggle for me to do that. Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people listening, it's a struggle, right? We're so busy, sometimes busy just being busy. And is it a distraction, or are we actually moving the balls up the hill? It's tough.
Right.
And
Right.
I wonder, like, I think I know, but is there like a silver lining, almost like, I don't know. I don't want to say like you wouldn't change it, but what's the silver line?
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of gathered after all of these things that sort of were happening to me. I mean, I even fell at one point and cracked my skull and had to be stapled up and all of that. So working on a home renovation project because, like I said, I constantly have projects. Um, I think I finally figured out, like, I had to be hit on the head a few times to figure this out. And that's
Literally.
the truth. Yeah, literally, because the universe was like, hey, Jen, you need to slow down a little bit. And I think the silver lining is just being able to internalize that idea and to appreciate that I can still share and do the things that I love. My passion is sharing and inspiring others to be their own best advocate for their health. But I can also still be a mom and an inspiration to my own kids by showing them how to have more balance. And I think that's become what the silver lining is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it. There's always is a silver lining. We have to look for it. And it's like that yin yang of life. Like, why is this happening? And you said so much back there. I don't want to skip over because I don't know if you know Stephen Collar, but he wrote this book, The Art of Impossible. And he talks about, I know this isn't for that, but creative, right? So you are a creative, that other thing's happening as well. But he's saying creatives, if you don't rest, your body will do it for you. And everybody has a different number, like, but pretty much within 3 months, you need to do something and just slow down. Some people 8 weeks, some people 10 weeks, whatever it is. But if you don't do it, your body will do it for you. That kind of sounds like what's happened to you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I had to learn the hard way, like I said. And so now it's become part of who I am, but also my message to others so that they don't have to repeat things like I've gone through, right? The constant being beat down on the head to get the message. But it's really, really important because, like you said, if we're not taking care of ourselves and making those choices, our body kind of makes them for us and, in different ways. Yeah, health-wise, energetic, or whatever.
Yeah, I know for sure. So now I guess I would love to know some of the tools there. I hear you talking about test, take the test, take the test. And some of the other, we'll get into more of that after, but let's maybe start there.
Yeah, so in functional medicine, we have the saying, test, don't guess. And, I have to also preface this conversation with no test is really 100% of the time, right? They're always going to be like a moment or a capture in time. And especially things with like SIBO breath tests, they're not 100% accurate. Even stool tests is just a moment in time from something that's going on in your large colon. But we gather this kind of data and then put it all together in a nice package along with the person that's sitting in front of us, right? So that's the really important part. We're not, quote unquote, treating to a test. We are, looking at all the pieces and connecting the dots, right? So we look at those tests as one data point in someone's puzzle piecing, right? And yeah, so like I said, there's a thing called a SIBO breath test. You can ask your doctor for that. Some GIs are getting on board finally with SIBO, but some of them are still doubting that it even exists. And so it's important to find a practitioner who's going to listen to you and help support you in that way. And of course, this is like a service that I provide to my clients, or you don't even have to be a client of mine in order to order the test. Just because I want to make it available to people, right? But like I said, you can also do stool tests, but this is information about what's going on in your large colon, but you can sort of put together some pieces and take some clues from that about what might be going on in the small intestine too. So that's
Amazing.
right. Yeah.
So this is anyone with a chronic disease, chronic illness, anyone who has a family member with chronic illness. This is what they're going through. They're talking to doctors, screaming, help me. This is what's happening. And the doctor's like, maybe it's in your head. And
Yeah.
so advocacy, you said it twice now, and it's so important. I teach groups for chronic pain, anxiety, depression. And this is like one of the biggest things we talk about. Like, you need to advocate for yourself. Just because they're a doctor, it doesn't mean they know everything. And so I think it's really important to talk about advocacy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of my goals that really have grown over the years. while I've been in practice. And it comes from a place of my own personal experience, being told by my own GI, hey, Jen, I think you know more about SIBO than I do at this point. I don't know how to help you. Here's an antidepressant, right? And so having that experience taught me that a lot of people, it's not just me, are feeling unseen and unheard. And so that's part of my mission, is to help empower people. And, I will say this happens more often to women. Statistics show this. They get, dismissed or ignored or kind of put to the side, and saying things like it's all in your head or you're exaggerating and things like that. And so it's really part of what I do in my practice. Yes, we're talking about your gut health, but I'm also really interested in empowering people to ask more questions, to find the person that resonates with them, who's going to listen, who's going to, keep digging deeper and peeling away those layers so that you can find what your root cause is and then work towards that, right? Instead of just using Band-Aids and addressing symptoms alone.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
advocacy is a big one.
Is there like not like a common root cause? Obviously, everyone's different, but is there a common root causes that happen here?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And there's a handful that I see most commonly in my practice. There can be many, but these are the most common ones. So we're going to start with food poisoning. So say you traveled abroad or you went to the buffet or you ate at your sister's wedding and the food wasn't quite right. You get about a food poisoning, and that can lead to things like anhydrogen producers in the small intestines. There's other things that are very common that people overlook. So things like being on NSAIDs. Say you sprained your ankle and you've been taking some over-the-counter pain relievers like ibuprofen for a period of time. That can dramatically shift your microbiome and cause inflammation in the gut lining. Things like PPIs, which are proton pump inhibitors, people are popping these things like acid suppressors like candy, and they were never designed to be used that way. And people now are on them for decades. And when you don't have that robust stomach acid in the stomach to help you start breaking down things, then you have increased food fodder in the small intestines for bacteria to feed on. Also, there's things like I said, antidepressants can slow or speed up your motility. So that can affect your microbiome and cause wear and tear or increase toxins. Even birth control can do that as well. But the biggest one I see in my practice is, guess what, JP?
Alcohol?
Not alcohol, but yes, that's on the list as well. Stress.
Ooh,
Stress is the biggest one. Yep.
okay.
And yeah, and this is the dynamic. Let me tell you all about it. So stress, when we're in a fight or flight type of situation, I'm sure your audience has heard a lot about this. We're stuck in this mode of a chronic feedback loop, right? So we're stuck in survival mode. And when you're trying to run from the tiger or the lion or whatever, your body is not interested in doing things like digestion or, thinking about proper elimination or what we call this cleansing wave. It's our migrating motor complex. This is the contractions in the intestinal tract to help clean things out. And so that essentially gets impaired or stops altogether for some people. And they're dealing with constipation or irregularity and bloating and things like that. But that creates an awesome environment for bacteria to start growing and expanding their real estate because they aren't getting cleaned out as they should be. And so I always like to say, be like a zebra. So there's this really great book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And this is essentially the idea of, when you're in the wild on the safari or wherever zebras live, they're going about their day and they're chill and they're in parasympathetic mode. And then all of a sudden, the predator comes along and wants to chase them. And so the zebra is going to go into fight or flight or sympathetic dominance and run away, right? And then once they get to the place of safety, then they shake it all out and they go back to doing what they're doing. But humans, we don't do that anymore. We're kind of stuck in the running mode. And that shuts down things like digestion, hormone production, decreases our cognitive power and all of this stuff. So, I could go on for days and days, but that's essentially why stress is often a root cause for SIBO and relapse,
All
by the
right.
way. Yeah.
Okay, so homeostasis, if the stress response is constantly turned on, your body doesn't have time to rest and repair. And if you're in chronic disease, chronic pain, even when you're sleeping, it's not doing it. You're not
Right.
actually getting proper sleep.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
idea of the savannah was that all the blood would go to your arms and legs so you could run away. And so nothing's coming to heal the inside of your body and your organs.
Mhm. That's
And
exactly right. Yes.
and I just want to say it for like that because some people, they might be like, I don't even know what you guys are talking about. But guaranteed that person who's like, I don't know what you're talking about, knows someone in their family or a friend who's going through this. And it's not even just SIBO now. Now you're talking about, like you're saying, our life, right? What happens when the lion and the tiger becomes your boss at work? Now you're just constantly in stress.
Exactly.
I love it. So
Exactly.
you said food a little bit, so I'm wondering, obviously food plays a role. So is there certain foods that can help? Is there certain foods that we definitely should stay away from? You mentioned a gluten allergy earlier.
Yeah, yeah. So this is such a huge topic, and we could probably have a whole show on it, but I'll just try to put it in a nutshell for you. So this is a really interesting area of debate within the SIBO world, I'll just say. And there's some practitioners who say you need to be on really, really strict diets and avoid things like what we call FODMAPs. So these are types of foods that have different types of sugars and carb makeups and fibers that can trigger symptoms in someone who has a bacterial overgrowth, right? But what I see in my practice is people coming to me who have been on low FODMAP diets for months and even years. And what's happening now is that they're becoming nutrient deficient because they're avoiding things like cruciferous vegetables and garlic and onions and all these things that are really helpful and healthy for us, right? And so we get on these really limited, restricted diets, and then we start having food anxiety and all of this sort of stuff. Then on the other end of the spectrum, there's practitioners out there who will say, well, just eat white rice and potatoes for the rest of your life so you don't have any symptoms. Well, what kind of nutrients are you going to get from that sort of diet, right? Remember, we need like super awesome key nutrients to even self-heal, right? And so it's really important. So I kind of land in the middle of that spectrum. And I say, you know what, let's try this sort of modified food guideline. I never call it a diet. And I don't say that it's pass or fail, right? Because everyone's going to be different. But it does include small portions of different types of vegetables or things that might normally trigger someone. But we do it in a way so it's not food stacking, is what I like to call. So you're still getting some nutrients, but not overdoing it and then not having symptoms. And we use those only temporarily. The goal is always going to be to increase your food variety and your food freedom. This is a huge thing in the gut world because people are feeling isolated and depressed and anxious about what they're eating and who they can go out with and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really big part of our conversation when we're working together.
Now I'm going to ask a question that I can preface. ChatGPT gave me the question because I wouldn't
Okay.
know how to ask this. But probiotics, it's asking like, can their probiotics make it worse? Because I would automatically assume it would maybe help.
Yeah, yeah. This is another juicy one, JP, because it's highly debated in the SIBO world. And so here's my kind of thinking, right? Probiotics, yes, we know we need to have a really great, happy, diverse microbiome, a variety of things growing in there that are all coexisting happily. And how I like to go about introducing something like that to someone's body is starting really slow and low on fermented foods. I'm talking about like maybe a tablespoon of sauerkraut or kimchi every few days, right? And this is how I like to reintroduce those sort of things. Having said that, this is a really mixed bag because some folks in my practice, well, the majority of the folks in my practice will do better if they go for a period of time without taking probiotics or fermented foods. Because the idea is you have an overgrowth of bacteria in your small intestine. So now you're just adding more on top. So now you just have like way too much bacteria, right? There is a theory out there that says good bacteria crowds out bad, but for most folks, I find that it causes them an increase in symptoms at the beginning stage of our time together because it's just way too much bacteria. It's an overload, is essentially what it is. So we do a sort of a temporary time without it. And then once we've kind of gone through our protocol and our plan for that person, then we will start to rebuild on the other side. And I don't typically go towards these huge, combinations of, bazillions of units of microbes, right? Because that's just overwhelming for most people. But having said that, there's always the unique person. And I'm one of those people, so I really appreciate these types. But they may do better on probiotics rather than what we quote unquote call a kill protocol, right? So they may do better on a probiotic for a temporary amount of time. But I do it really strategically and pick out strains that I think would be best fitted for that person. So to answer your question, I'd probably say in my practice, about 80% of the time, it's best to go off of probiotics for a while and then reintroduce them later. Yeah.
Beautiful. Michaela Peterson, Jordan Peterson's daughter, she has a thing where she only eats meat. I forget exactly what happened, but she was just her whole life in chronic pain. No doctors could help her, nothing. And so that's what they did. They literally took one food at a time, took it out, put a new food in, took it out. And whatever worked out, she only has meat and water. That's her diet. But the idea of there's advocacy coming through again, right? Like nobody could help her. So she decided this is what we're going to do. And you could be the experimenter in your own life. I think it could get worse, but like I don't know. I don't want to give any suggestions, but try it out, right? If something doesn't feel right, I have a friend who he eats every time. He always had bad acne. He stopped eating bread. It went away. Like no problem. So we have to experiment. I kind of wonder, so Chinese medicine, acupuncture, parasympathetic, sympathetic, can we meet them in the middle with the vagus nerve? I don't know if you know much about it, but I think the world doesn't know enough about it, but I'm pretty sure this is going to be the answer to almost everything, is if we can stimulate it, fix it, especially, I guess my mind goes to chronic pain because I was in a mobility scooter for a long time, taking 33 pills a day. And
wow.
my back was wrecked, and it was probably like a lot of not stretching it out and the meridians being blocked.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so sorry to hear that you went through that. That sounds excruciating. My goodness. But look at you now. This is awesome.
I wouldn't change it for a second.
Yeah. Yeah. So to your point, sometimes these things are a big fat experiment because we're all so highly unique. We're coming from different places. We've had different experiences. We're surrounded by different environments, we have different coping mechanisms and all that kind of stuff. So we're all highly unique and different things are going to affect us differently. This is one of the things I do in my practice. I don't use blanket protocols because it doesn't make sense to do that, right? But to your comment about the vagus nerve, I'm hoping that more and more science comes out about this. I love to geek out about this kind of stuff. And essentially what it is a nervous system running from your brain to your gut and back and forth. And I like to call it a superhighway of information. And, once upon a time, we used to think the brain was constantly sending the signal to the gut. But now we know actually more often it's the gut sending the signal to the brain. And the signal is coming from our microbes. So, essentially our microbes are in charge of who we are, right? Which I think is really cool to think about. And, like I said, this is one thing that we will address in practice when we're working together with someone who has, for example, a slowed migrating motor complex and, their nervous system and their gut has been turned off or impaired for some reason. We'll try to start stimulating that that whole process there so that there's good, robust communication between the two. And this also kind of leads me to the idea of, whatever's going on in your gut is affecting your mood and your mental capacity and all of those things. It's a forward feeding cycle because then you start feeling anxious about where's the toilet? Am I going to make it? And it's just on and on and on, right? Gosh, I can just go off on a whole tangent about that, but I think I answered your question.
Yeah, that tangent's fun. I love to geek out on that stuff too. So definitely appreciate it. I think there's a book called Eat Fat, Get Thin by Dr. Mark Hyman. And
Yeah.
he talks about specifically potato starch, how it can start cleaning out your gut. Take a little tablespoon, he says, before bed, and it will actually like help people lose weight. But his idea is that it starts cleaning out your gut, kind of that fermentation thing you're talking about. And so is there any like secrets that you have, like home remedies or anything that obviously won't work for everybody, but that little tricks you learned along the way?
Yeah. Wow, that's a good question. Let me think about that. So, it's interesting because I'll have some people, and it's mostly women, who will come to me and their main goal is like, I just want to lose the bloat and I want to lose the weight. It's really interesting when we've had ongoing dynamic in the gut, specifically like SIBO, where we might have a decreased ability to absorb nutrients and, the things that our body needs for metabolic health. Excuse me. And sometimes people will start gaining weight after they start feeling better, and some people will lose because their body feels safe enough to release that excess fat. So I would say that my biggest tip would probably be sleep and rest for losing weight, which I know sounds kind of controversial, but for people who are stuck in this sort of sympathetic fight or flight place with a chronic condition or infection, their body is not releasing that excess fat because it's holding on to it just in case, like for emergencies, right? And so once we reset that whole message to the brain that, okay, it's actually safe for me to heal, I'm going to start having a better night's sleep, going to bed earlier. I'm going to be taking breaks in between my clients or, go for a walk with my dog or whatever other activity we feel is calming between our, CrossFit and all the things we're doing. Our body gets the message, oh yeah, it is safe to start healing and I can let go of some of this excess now. And that's probably my biggest tip. Yeah.
Awesome. So you said about just their CrossFit. We're talking about the vagus nerve, the highway between the brain and the gut. So there's the gut. That's what's happening. But that's in our 3D world. So is there more to it? Is there mindset? Does things like exercise like come in to help, especially in women maybe over 40, perimenopause, menopause kind of thing? Maybe the physical exercise will stay with the body, and then we'll go into the mindset, anything like that, beliefs and all that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love getting into this kind of stuff because it's all the stuff that we do that's outside of what's on our plate. Some people just get so focused on that part, right? When they're talking about gut health. But here's the thing. So sometimes I'll have folks come to me, I get a lot of 30 somethings, for instance, who are just like, I'm training for a marathon or I'm going to ride my bike across the country. And, or I've had some competitive swimmers in my practice before, just really, really athletic types, professional bodybuilders and things like that. And unfortunately, we have to have kind of a real talk, straight talk sort of conversation. And I have to say, yes, exercise is really important for your mental health, right? You're getting those juicy endorphins and all that. It makes you feel good. It's also really great to be moving because you want to be able to have an activated lymph drainage system so that you're getting rid of toxins, right? But there's a caveat there, and it's kind of like what I was saying before. So you want to find a better balance. Instead of doing CrossFit 5 days a week, maybe do it 3 days a week and then do like restorative yoga on the other 2 days, right? Or going for a pleasant walk, something that's going to be a little lower on the intensity factor, right? Remember that crazy exercise like that is a physiological stressor to your body. It is sending a message to your brain, hey, I'm stressed out right now. I have to lift 400 pounds, right? And so it's really important to have that conversation and really internalize that idea that in order to reset your nervous system in order to heal, in order to boost your immune system, to overcome infections. All of those things have to happen during parasympathetic dominance, resting, digesting, and healing. And so it's important to allow yourself, give yourself permission in between those harder workouts to reset. And so that's kind of where I would go with that. And then as far as the mental component, like I said, of course, moving your body is always going to be awesome for your mental health as well. Dancing, walking, playing with your dog, going to the park with your kids, whatever it looks like, right? Including exercise, like a routine that you're doing. The other thing too is that the resting and being quiet and being still is also really huge for your mental health. Many of us are not still and we're not quiet. Even when we're not doing quote unquote anything, we're not at work and we're not making dinner and we're not doing this and that. We're sitting on the couch looking at our phone. So we're still not being still or quiet in that moment. So it's really important to just have more nothingness, I think.
100%. I'm reading right now The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
But it's like, take that first hour of your day. It doesn't have to be 5 a.m. and you can just elevate your life by just take a moment, right? Thank you. And that everything's about to get busy when I open my eyes, so I better do this now here, right? I am training for a marathon right now.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. And so that brings to mind a couple of questions, because today my pee is definitely not clear. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering about hydration in people. And then the other one will also be about a sauna, because we know it just opens your pores and literally just you release the stress and the cortisol out of your body. So do you talk about that?
Yeah. So hydration, let's start with that one. This is huge, right? You'd be surprised how many things people are suffering from on a daily basis that are rooted in dehydration. It's amazing. We really just don't drink enough clear water. A lot of people are drinking coffee, tea, and soda, and they think that they're getting hydrated. But a lot of those things will actually further deplete you of not only your water molecules in your body, right, but also important minerals, because they can act as binders to important minerals. Now, like everything is connected, right? So we need to have our key mineral balance in place for our cells to be able to even absorb that water that we're drinking. If you're drinking a ton of water and you're going pee like right after and it's super clear, that means your body is not able to absorb all those minerals that it needs. So maybe thinking about electrolytes and things like that. Hydration is huge for gut health. It helps clean things out. It's like mopping the floor, right? Let's have a really comprehensive approach to thinking about how we can clear toxins and food buildup and all of that sludge that we tend to accumulate in the digestive tract by drinking more water. And in addition to that, I like to recommend folks drink the majority of their water between meals, because when we are drinking these huge, big gulp-sized iced waters, with our meal, we're dampening our fire in our stomach to be able to break down and digest our foods. So we want robust and stomach acid in there. And when we're drinking a ton of liquid with our food, we're kind of diluting that whole picture. So I always suggest doing it between meals, which is a better idea. Obviously, you can sip water while you're eating to push the food down, but you get the idea, right?
Yeah.
And then what was the second part of your question?
So I'm just thinking about sauna. Like I go to the sauna, but I just recently realized how important it was. I don't know if you know Peter Attia. I've seen him all the time on all the podcasts, but he was just saying how it could be like the number one thing. And I was like, what? That's crazy. And then I'm like, it makes perfect sense, because like literally the cortisol, like watch it ooze out of my body, right?
Yeah. So saunas are amazing. And I'll use these as a recommendation to some of my clients. Obviously, I'm not anybody's doctor here, right? So you got to figure this out for yourself. But the act of sweating, and again, going back to that lymph system, we have different detox pathways in the body through stool and urine and sweat. And everything needs to be moving constantly and not getting stagnant. And in our sort of sedentary lifestyles, we don't sweat that much anymore. The truth is, right? And so doing sauna can be really helpful, especially for those who have, a buildup of toxins, have slow lymph drainage, and things like that. I would caution people, though, when they're in the beginning of a self-healing journey, to not overdo it because it can be quite taxing on the body, especially if you're not being mindful of replenishing that water and your minerals and all of those kind of things that, get flushed out along with the toxins. So, I'll typically recommend start out 5 to 10 minutes and see how you do. And then, build yourself up. But I love sauna, and I'm glad to hear that you're doing that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, my advice always in my coaching, one of my philosophies is go low, go slow. And because
Yes.
it stacks, right? You could start with 5 and then you keep going. I'll add to your caution that neither one of us are actual doctors. So if you're thinking about a sauna, definitely go talk to your doctor first.
Yeah.
I find it amazing to I'm sitting there and I watch my heart rate on my watch just go up and up. And it's just like, it looks like I'm running hard. And I was like, whoa. It's so definitely like, yeah, we're not doctors. So don't just jump in the sauna for an hour or anything.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Use caution. Yep. It's funny. I was going to say really quickly, if you don't mind, I was going to say, there's a such thing as like a sauna bag. So I got one of those last year because our heat was out and I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to get warm. I usually like to take hot baths, but I was also renovating my bathroom at the time. So I treated myself to one of those. It's like a little sleeping bag. You just get in there and oh my gosh, it's like up to 140 something degrees. Talk about a good sweat. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I don't have one, but I know people have the steam one, and that one's totally different than an actual sauna. That one's a lot more like you're getting cooked inside. You can't stay in
Yeah.
as long.
Getting baked. Yeah.
Now, forgive me if I sound dumb, but is acupressure, is this acupuncture? Is that the same thing or no?
Yeah, so the theory behind all of it is the exact same. You're still using and stimulating the points, the acupoints. Acupressure is just a great way to do it yourself at home, anywhere. And so, same theory, same Chinese medicine, and all that kind of stuff. It's just not needles, it's your touch. So, for instance, one of my favorite ones is this Hoku right here between the thumb and the finger. This is a really good one for moving energy downward, and helps with constipation or headaches. But I will also say use caution if you're pregnant because, again, moves energy down. So. But yeah, all kinds of things that you can do on yourself. I've used it on my children, and I teach it to my clients as a way to, reduce anxiety, increase energy, sleep better, all kinds of things, not just gut health.
Very cool. As we begin to wind down, if this episode resonates with you, please like, subscribe, share. And in case you were looking for us on Next Steps on YouTube, we've changed to Phase 4 podcast on YouTube. Everything's still the same on Spotify. And please reach out to Jen if you have any questions or if you're looking for some guidance. And Jen, I always ask everyone this question. This is the Phase 4 podcast, and Phase 4 in the 6-phase meditation by Vishen Lakhiani. It's all about creating your future 3 years out. So where is Jen Yundt Coles 3 years from today?
Yeah, so Jen is a lot more calm. And Jen is also has a lot more space in her schedule because she is implementing different systems for her coaching practice, and creating more groups and things to help more people in less amount of time so that I'm honoring my own healing journey. And it may even include a move to a new place, who knows? And I'm dreaming kind of big and being open to that. But 3 years from now, definitely feeling more calm and rested and organized. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I love the group idea because something like this, especially, is people going through it are alone. They have no idea. They think they're alone. They think nobody else. And then you get them in a group and it's like, what? That happened to you too? Oh, that's happening to me. I feel that.
Exactly. Community and creating and designing your healing community is so key for overcoming long-term chronic illness, for sure. Having people in your corner. And if it's not people in your family, then you create your family, right? You create your healing people
Yeah.
and bind them together. So yeah, community is important.
Yeah, and even with those groups, sometimes you just don't want to talk to your family about those things, right? They just don't get it. You could tell them over, yeah, my back hurts. I used to say, they're like, yeah, my back hurts too. I'm like, oh.
But like, really? Yeah.
Um, does meditation come into this at all?
Yeah, meditation's an important part of the picture for healing, but not everyone resonates with meditation. So, sometimes I'll start people off with, why don't you try this guided version first? Um, just so, they kind of get the idea of how to move into it. But I do have clients who are like, no, I'm just totally rebelling against that idea. It can be so, so helpful for you to reset your nervous system and boost your immune system and have a vision for yourself. I mean, having that strong vision of where you want to be after a chronic illness really helps you to keep going. But I'll use other things too, like journaling. I'll encourage my clients to sing and hum and do other things that activate that vagus nerve, like we were talking about before, and it really helps them kind of be grounded in their body. So, not everyone's the same and not open to meditation, but like I said, I love it personally. I'm actually doing hypnotherapy every night tonight for myself. And
To your own or someone else's voice?
yeah, so I'm actually listening to his show is called The Hypnotist. His name is Adam Cox. He's from the UK. And if you just type in anything in his search box, I'm sure he has a hypnotherapy session for it. It's amazing.
I would check it
Yeah,
out.
check it out.
I use one. It's progressive hypnosis. It's just a YouTube channel. They actually have stuff for gut health, but it's all just like dropping those subconscious, like while you're falling asleep. And this is like some Australian lady's voice being like, "You're good. You're healing now." And
Oh,
I think
awesome.
my kids make fun of me, but I don't care. I feel great when I wake up.
Yeah, that's all that matters. Who cares what anyone else says, right?
Right. So before I ask my final question, I always let the guests take it wherever they want. So if you have something to sell, sell it, a message of hope or inspiration, or all of the above, take it away.
Yeah, so I guess I have a little bit of a combination of those two things. So, like I was saying, my bigger message or mission at this point is becoming really thinking about how I can empower other people to become their best versions of themselves. I like to say, be the you that you want to be. And my practice, although I'm dealing with gut health and helping people overcome these chronic conditions and beat the bloat and all that kind of stuff, it's really more about empowering them to set a vision for themselves and to get back to being like the super badass that they were before they had this condition, right? Because it can be so isolating and depressing and all of that. So my bigger mission is to really share that message with people that there is hope, that I've been there, that I understand it, that I can relate to what they're saying. I have an empathetic soul, and I think it's important for us to find people that we resonate with on our healing journey. And out of that really came inspiration recently that I'm about to launch in March is what I'm calling my Mission 20. And this is you're getting the first of it, JP, here, because I haven't talked about it yet. It's called Mission 20. And I felt inspired to onboard 20 motivated women in honor of March, which is Women's History Month, and also International Women's Health Day on March 8th. I'm going to be giving some other talks at different conferences and things like that I'm looking forward to. But really, it's going to be a concentrated effort on my part to really find those women who are also trying to find me and really elevate their health so that we can create a community together to empower and inspire one another. And so that's kind of where I'm headed next. And people can find me on my website. That's my hub. It's www.thesibocoach.com.
Awesome. That was my last question, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
So then my last question would be, what didn't I ask you that I should have?
Oh, let me see. I say this sometimes on different podcast interviews, but I've shared recently that I just started taking voice lessons. And this is something that I want to encourage everyone, men and women, to think about, not voice lessons specifically, but finding the thing that's going to bring them joy. Finding something that's going to bring you some happiness in your day, because sometimes we get really bogged down by what's going on in the world, or if we're having a health issue or things like that, or if we're caring for someone else who has a health issue, right? And so for me, that's voice lessons, because I felt like, you know what, my throat chakra needs to open up a little bit. And I've been playing guitar for several years, actually since I was in my late teens. And I just decided, you know what, this is what I'm doing for myself. And this is how I check out. This is my sanity for now. And I highly encourage you or anyone who's listening to your show to find their thing, whether it's voice lessons or other.
That's awesome. Yeah, we call it moments of awe or just gratitude, right? You can cultivate it in the middle of your day.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And again, it's a really good way to reset when you're kind of getting caught up in that, running from the tiger mode, right? And so finding little moments of joy here and there, whatever it looks like for you, do it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Jen, thank you so much. This was awesome, and I'm so grateful for your time today.
Thank you, JP. I had a great time with you today.